this is who Van Jones used to be. But here's the thing. I don't believe that Van Jones, maybe at one point, maybe a long time ago, he had genuine principles, but I find it hard to believe that someone who can sell out the way that he has was ever truly principled, ever truly had a profound belief in liberation, who had like a staunch sense of class consciousness. I just a person like Van Jones always must be an opportunist, even if it's in the back pocket. Even if it's not in the foreground. To be fair, his work in Oakland was pivotal, just as insane pivot is unfathomable. But you know what I'm saying, though? It's like, what said, is there anyone here who has a recurring dream that there's something you're supposed to be doing? You look at your journal and the same idea keeps coming back. Is there anyone here who's ever swallowed hard and took a stand for something that you knew was unpopular? Has anybody in this room ever really, really screwed up and then tried again? Well, I would say if you answered yes to any of those questions, you are a social entrepreneur. The activist hung on to Jones' words, captivated by the potential that he described within each of them. He finished with an exhortation worthy of a revival. Our species is struggling to live through you, through that dream, through that journal entry that keeps recurring. I beg you, embrace that rule-breaking, life-affirming risk-taking you that the world needs so desperately right now. He bowed his head and was no criticizing, no condemning whatsoever. Okay. So Van Jones, this is wild. I did not know that Van Jones not only started a Maoist, Marxist-Leninist collective in San Francisco in the 90s. Did you know that? Did you know that Van Jones had a Maoist, Marxist, Leninist arc back in the 90s? But also, I didn't know this, but also, like, I knew he used to be more progressive. I knew he's like definitely, he's flipped that lid and he's very much a grifter, and he sold out. But I guess I didn't know the specifics. I also didn't know that in 2003, he put out a pro-Palestinian rap album. Oh, yes, he did. And yes, we will listen to a clip of it. Okay, so the reason that people are talking about Van Jones, also Flex the Red, thank you for the 2 months. People are talking about Van Jones because Van Jones sucks. We know Van Jones sucks. But recently, he was on Bill Maher's show. Bill Maher, who's also a real piece of shit. And Thomas Friedman, I think he was also on there. Anyway, here's the clip that it's crazy because there's so many people saying awful things all the time. So I think it takes something specifically awful like this to make noise and also to force the person who said it to apologize, even though the apology was a little too late. And Van Jones, we know where you stand. So that's a hollow apology. So here's the clip.
But isn't part of that because we had to fold everything into critical race theory, and somehow the Middle East became part of,
I see it differently.
Okay, first of all, what the fuck is Bill Maher even talking about? Why does this man have to always relate things back to like critical race theory? What? Huh? Critical race theory? I hate him. I hate him so much. And this is also so embarrassing for Van Jones because Bill Maher is trying to blame critical race theory. Critical race theory that in right-wing speak equals black. Okay? Critical race theory is a way to like use a slur against black people in the same way DEI, right? DEI, critical race theory. It's very much a dog whistle. It's giving racism. So Van Jones, because no, of course not. He's not going to push back on Bill Maher's insane, insane. I can't even call this an argument. Just whatever he's saying here, trying to talk about how like trying to relate the Middle East to critical race theory.
And I love this conversation because I think people, those of us who went to college, give a lot more credit to college courses for how the world works than I do. This is not about critical race theory on college campuses. This is about Iran. Iran and Qatar have...
This is the craziest conversation. It's not about critical race theory. And to be like full context, let me just go back to...
All right, here we are on overtime with the CNN.
Words, not weapons.
Should the government be more...
Because this said Van Jones highlights from radical anti-war album. So was this just an interview? I mean, he's spitting in it. Let's be clear. He's spitting in it, which it just, you can't believe that he was saying this 20 years ago. But that's why I'm like, sometimes you just got to state facts to music for sure. Do you think he's seen Macklemore and is like, damn, maybe I should have stuck with that. maybe I should have stuck with rapping about the Palestinian people. I have a Van Jones relevant video here. He follows an ID. Oh, I know. Yeah. Van Jones is so sorry. So sorry for what he said. When the girlies have revealed he follows hot IDF girls on Instagram. He follows motherfucking hot IDF girls on Instagram. Isn't that so vile? Hot IDF girls. Yeah. Oh, God. When I was in college, I thought I was Maoist. But then I realized I'm actually capitalist. There's some bars right there for you. A lot of people had quite different outlooks and then they grew old. No, I think that here's the thing. There are definitely plenty of normal people, okay, people who are not in media, not in politics, who get older and become more conservative. And in fact, there is that old fucking stupid ass adage of when you're younger, you're liberal because you vote with your heart. And then when you're older, you become one, just to see like how much Van Jones has sold out, but also the rapping.
The rights of the Palestinian people being respected. And at this point...
but at least this was morally correct. Clearly he never was truly principled in this way. That now he is 20 years later saying the shit he's saying.
The end of the occupation, the right of return for Palestinian people. These are the critical dividing line, global dividing line questions of human rights. We have to be here. No American would put up with an Israeli-style occupation of their hometown for 53 days, let alone 54 years. We see violence against poor people and poor people of color within the U.S. border, at the U.S. border, and beyond the U.S. border. And you see U.S. tax dollars funding all of it. And so we have, this now global struggle against a U.S.-led security apparatus and military agenda that impacts people here and impacts people around the world. And I think that we need to see our problems as linked.
All right, Van Jones, thank you very much.
The rights of the Palestinian people being respected.
Van Jones, highlights from radical anti-war album. Okay, this is not rapping. So is this who set this to music? what was Van Jones ultimately in it for? Did he envision himself as wanting to be someone like Martin Luther King Jr., wanting to be like renowned and famous? I mean, there are definitely people who get into activism, who get into, who get into politics, get into activism because they have these grandiose dreams, because they are narcissistic, because they have these ultimately ulterior motives in like in using that to enhance their own celebrity, right? Their own status. I think he was one of those fake leftist men who pretend to be woke or whatever to improve their dating opportunities and disarm people. Well, my question is just who is Van Jones? Who is Van Jones? So the other reason why Van Jones is so clearly a fucking sellout is because of this rap album that he made in 2003. Ready? Ready to listen to some of Van Jones' rap album? He calls for an end to the Israeli occupation and the right of return for Palestinian refugees. Nowadays, he makes fun of dead babies in Gaza for late night TV laugh tracks. Now, I will tell you, this is painful for a couple reasons. As some type of punchline, the audience responding to it this way, like, it's vile. It's just so vile. And the fact that we're not even just ignoring dead babies in Gaza. We're now mocking dead babies in Gaza. So crazy to even throw in the words DEI and critical race theory, but it's Bill Maher and he just will do that every single time. So, this was the shit. I do think the toothpaste is out the tube. I agree with that. And I don't think it's going back in. And I think like, it's why too, when I see Moist Critical, when I see these other people who usually are silent on these matters, or at least have been silent on the last couple years, them speaking out, like that is a result of the shift. That is a result of the toothpaste being out of the tube. As such, the list of demands sent to Paramount, it's so evil. There's nothing else to say besides it's so evil. All right. So Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen is really the only one who I've seen say anything from the Democrat side. He called out Van Jones and said, this is not about critical race theory he called out Van Jones because Van ended up apologizing. Like I said, the apology was fucking bullshit. And it's not even just a little too late. It's like, Van, we know what your allegiances are towards. He wears his little yellow ribbon everywhere he goes. Van Yahoo Ben Jones. So Chris Van Hollen said, I'm glad Van Jones apologized for his sick joking about dead kids in Gaza, but the problem goes deeper. He spread Netanyahu propaganda. I would just like to point out, it's not just Netanyahu propaganda. Like, we need to start calling this Israeli propaganda. Netanyahu is not Van Jones has sold his soul. I think Van Jones is a fucking grifter. I think Van Jones knows full well what he's doing, and that's why he does it. Senator Van Hollen is right here. Van Jones should think harder about what he said. He continues to stand by his claim that Iranian propaganda is somehow responsible for the reason that we see so many dead children on our feeds. Iran does not have that power. It's absurd to suggest otherwise. These dead bodies would not be on our feeds if somebody had not killed them first. And here's the reason why I think Van Jones has not been fooled, okay? Because of this. The fact that Van Jones back in the day was like, I'm going to start a Marxist Marxist-Leninist collective. Like, that was Van Jones back in the 90s. By the time the final speaker addressed the crowd, people shuffled restlessly in their seats as a lone infant wailed. Van Jones, a tall, dark-skinned man wearing a Kanye was right, well, that didn't age well, Kanye was right t-shirt under his black blazer, seemed to have little in common with his audience of predominantly white hippies. Feeling the energy in the room ebbing straight from the stage, he later said Jones decided to throw out the talk he had planned to deliver about the work of his human rights organization, the Ella Baker Center. Instead, he asked the name of the squalling baby. Tavio, the mother replied. Tavio is a social entrepreneur. Tavio is changing the rules. See, speak when you want to speak. The crowd laughed and Tavio's parents smiled beatifically. Then Jones alluded to what he had heard from some of the other speakers that day. They're calling out for us to be brave again, to break out of patterns, to start breaking some rules, try new stuff. He explicitly challenged the ponytailed speaker's notion that social entrepreneurs such as he are isolated heroes. Jones said he personally would be babbling on a street corner somewhere if not for the support of his colleagues. He instead insisted that each member of the audience had the potential to light a fire that could change the world. Jones quickly involved others in his presentation. Oh, and this is titled The New Face of Environmentalism. Van Jones renounced his rowdy black nationalism on the way towards becoming an influential leader of the new progressive politics. So this is already Van Jones on his way, where this is past the 90s, okay? Past the 90s when Van Jones was very like, Marx is the way, to he already started to see the opportunity of rebranding. He used to be a progressive figurehead in Oakland. Right. So this is like the Van Jones that I knew. I didn't know about the 90s Van Jones. Didn't know about that Van Jones. Okay. So Van Jones was greeted with whistles, hoots, and applause. Half the audience leapt to its feet. If it hadn't been a crowd of sedate white liberals, someone might have shouted, "Hallelujah." A woman turned to her companion and asked, "Where did this guy come from again?" Well, he came from rural Tennessee by way of Yale Law School. The self-described former rowdy black nationalist is best known as founder of the Ella Baker Center, an Oakland-based nonprofit group with roots firmly grounded in criminal justice issues that affect low-income people of color. He also started Bay Area Police Watch, a program that assists victims of alleged police brutality. He made his mark as an activist by brashly saying things no other civil rights leaders would say, such as Willie Brown's police commission is killing black people. The center's second program, the reason that he had the Kanye is right shirt on is because when Kanye said George Bush hates black people. The center's second program, Books Not Bars, runs a campaign to radically transform California's youth prisons into rehabilitation centers. But Jones's personal life has been punctuated with a series of epiphanies, each of which has expanded the focus of his work. In college, he embraced the fight for racial justice. Then he moved to the Bay Area and embraced the struggle for class justice. When he gained interest in environmentalism, he started searching for a way to pull together all three quests in the service of a better future. Now he believes that he has found that unified field theory, one suffused with his rediscovered spirituality. He's out to sell it to the progressive world. Yeah, okay. So what I can tell you my goal in the coming weeks is to get to know you. I'll approach it the way any reporter would, but she wasn't a reporter. She was never really a reporter. That's hilarious to say I'll approach it the way any reporter would, with an open mind, a fresh notebook, and an urgent deadline. What I can tell you on day one is that I stand for the same core journalistic values that have defined this profession since the beginning, and I will continue to champion them alongside you. 1, journalism that reports on the world as it actually is. 2, journalism that is fair, fearless, and factual. 3, journalism that respects our audience enough to tell the truth plainly wherever it leads. Oh, so you mean the type of journalism like my favorite actress is not a human? If you want to see a virgin if you've always wanted to make sure that young girls on your screen are virgins, then you got to make sure they're AI. That kind of journalism. Journalism that makes sense of a noisy, confusing world. Journalism that explains things clearly without pretension or jargon. Journalism that holds both American political parties to equal scrutiny. Okay, this is so annoying because it's just simply not true, right? Journalism that hold both both sides. Barry, free press has never even been both sides. There is no such thing, because anyone who says they're a centrist, enlightened centrist, anyone who's like both siding is usually leaning to the right, is usually right wing. And the free press has, in their couple years of existing, has absolutely made sure to constantly paint liberals and the left as the source of the issues here. Like, they don't even talk about Donald Trump in any of their reporting. This has never been, they try, you know what it is? Because they are a conservative blog, but they try to maintain plausible deniability by being like, no, we are independent. We are politically independent. We have problems with both the right and the left, except the free press is always skeptical of the left, gives a lot of grace to the right, will entertain right-wing conspiracy, and also have no issue with platforming people on the right. And so anytime you see something like this, it's somebody like Barry Weiss, who's like, we're going to be holding both American political parties to equal scrutiny. That's never actually what's happening. I mean, on the free press, there's no, nearly zero pro-trans content. There is zero pro-Palestinian content. And in fact, the free press serves as just one of the most egregious propaganda sites for Israel. There is just always, and it's also like there's very little actual reporting, and most of it's just opinion writing. It's just punditry. And a lot of it is like all about how liberals are overreaching, and, it's very noteworthy that in all of the writing on free speech and protecting free speech, they hardly mention Donald Trump. So just to give you an idea of like what that fucking rag actually is. And this is who's coming in. Number 7, journalism that embraces a wide spectrum of views and voices so that the audience can contend with the best arguments on all sides of a debate. Yeah, let's debate like if Palestinians are human beings or not. Great. You know what? The audience needs to hear out all sides. The audience needs to hear all sides of, are Palestinians human beings who deserve to live? Number 8, journalism that rushes towards the most interesting and important stories, regardless of their unpopularity. Okay, so like propping up AI. We're gonna prop up AI, even though like the average reader is not here for that. And they're going to do that because they are beholden to billionaires. Number 9, journalism that uses all of the tools of the digital era. Journalism that understands that the best way to serve America is to endeavor to present the public with the facts first and foremost. I look forward to meeting many of you in the days ahead and to listening and learning from you. I am profoundly honored to join you, and I can't wait to get started. With gratitude and excitement, Barry. I genuinely feel bad for good people who work at CBS News, for people who are anticipating the incoming Barry Weiss rule with nothing but a great distaste. I hope she doesn't fuck with 60 Minutes. Oh, please, please.
Hours ago.
It's over. Like, I'm sorry to say, but this is the plan, and the plan is being carried out. 60 Minutes is already got fucked with. Yeah, 60 Minutes already got fucked with. This is what I mean by like the compromise, the compromising, the corruption, all that is already here. It's already here. And that is what has allowed Barry Weiss to come into power at CBS News. Okay. Well, we do have this story about 30 Paramount employees who have sent a letter to the office of CEO David Ellison and other senior executives slamming the company for aligning with the genocide in Gaza and of the Palestinian people. After 2 weeks without receiving a response, they followed up with a list of demands, including a call for Paramount to donate $1 million. Like, you know what? Commendable, but not going to happen. Including a call for Paramount to donate $1 million to the Palestine Children's Relief Fund in order to match its 2023 donation of the same amount to humanitarian relief efforts in Israel. I would not be surprised, too, if these employees find themselves without a job. If they signed it anonymously, maybe they'll be able to stay. But if they signed it with their names, or if they, find out who they are. The employee group, which calls itself both Paramount Employees of Conscience and Paramount Employees for Human Rights, operates anonymously. Members did not sign their name on the letter out of fear of retaliation, doxing, and elimination, given the company's upcoming, well-publicized layoffs. However, the group does specify that it includes staffers from every business unit within the enterprise and across all levels of seniority, including at the executive level. Variety has spoken to multiple members of the group to confirm their identities, employment at Paramount, and involvement with the letter. Paramount Employees of Conscience tells Variety that company leadership has not acknowledged receipt of either message. A Paramount representative declined Variety's request for comment. So remember that Paramount was the one studio that came out and blasted the Film Workers for Palestine pledge that a bunch of celebrities signed. Why do you think Paramount did that? Because Paramount is owned by the Ellisons now. I mean, if it was Sherry Redstone, it would have been the same thing. But you can already see how the Ellisons pro-Israel goals here is all like their control over the media and entertainment is already at play. So Paramount being the one company that came out against this pledge is because the Ellisons own this. The following week after this pledge, Paramount Employees of Conscience wrote to several company leaders to call the statement, which is the statement Paramount put out after this pledge was released, a dangerous and intentional distortion that does not represent the employees of this company. The letter reads, Paramount's claim that the pledge is an attempt to silence Israeli artists is a purposeful misrepresentation of the boycott and its objective. We applaud the FWP for pushing back against this bad faith argument. In the letter, the employees accuse Paramount of hypocrisy, pointing to the company's mission to promote mutual understanding, as stated in its response to the boycott. The letter reads, how can a company with this supposed creative mission actively ignore, suppress, and silence internal calls for years to champion stories that shed a light on the reality that marginalized and excluded communities, particularly Palestinians, face every day? Paramount Employees of Conscience claims that staffers across the company have meaningfully attempted to engage Paramount leadership with data-driven and objectively strategic business recommendations to acquire projects from Palestinian creators, such as the documentary No Other Land, which never found a U.S. distributor despite winning the Best Documentary Oscar earlier this year, and the short-form news series It's Bisan from Gaza and I'm Still Alive, which was eventually picked up by Al Jazeera's AJ+, and won Emmy and Peabody Awards in 2024. Instead, The letter claims that Paramount has distributed what it calls one-sided stories, noting the documentary projects We Will Dance Again, The Children of October 7th, and As One, the Israeli-Palestinian pop music journey in particular. As One follows a boy band made up of 4 Israelis and 2 Palestinians, which was conceptualized by American music executives and formed in Israel. We Will Dance Again and The Children of October 7th focus on Israeli children and attendees of Israel's Nova Music Festival. As such, the list of demands, here's the thing I will say though, I don't think this shit will work. I don't think it's working. I don't think it will work. All of this propaganda television and films that Paramount or whatever other companies are releasing because they're trying to claw back control of the narrative. They're trying to get people to shift back. Same thing with TikTok. I've already seen like how a lot of comments on posts on TikTok that are very clearly propaganda posts are being met with people basically being like, we see through the leadership on October 1st includes a commitment to producing, acquiring, and distributing content that represents not just the perspective and experience of the Palestinian people, but to also amplify Jewish voices that speak out against how the Israeli government misrepresent their culture and religious beliefs. The group additionally demands that Paramount guarantee that there will be no retaliation or punishment made against Paramount employees who speak out against genocide and apartheid. If only, though. Along with Ellison, the letter and the demands were sent to Paramount Skydance President Jeff Shell, Chief Strategy and Operating Officer Andy Gordon, Chief Communications Officer Melissa Zuckerman, Head of HR Jim Sterner, Direct-to-Consumer Chair Cindy Holland, Co-Chair of Paramount Pictures and Chair of Paramount Television Dana Goldberg, Co-Chair of Paramount Pictures and Vice Chair of Platforms Josh Greenstein, and TV Chair George Cheeks. Read the full letter below listed by the demands. Hogan, thank you for the gifted. I just realized tomorrow is 10/7. Yes, that's also why they've been ramping up these projects to release as a reminder on the anniversary of 10/7. Hey, just remember that what Israel is doing to Palestinians is righteous. Because remember 10/7. Remember what happened on 10/7. Don't think about anything else. Don't think about any date before October 7th. And just remember that because of what happened on that day, and it happened totally in a vacuum, that everything that has happened since is deserved. Don't think about any date before or after. Well, when you think about what's happened after, you just have to remember October 7th. You must. Did you watch the trailer for that miniseries? Yeah, I did. It's straight bullshit. I mean, it's just complete propaganda. It's as heavily propagandized as you would think it would be. So this is the full letter that was sent. I already read some of this, but as Paramount employees, we refuse to have our labor used to endorse complicity in the brutalization and erasure of an entire population. We do not and will not support the leadership team's attempts to align a publicly traded American company with the intentions, actions, and propaganda arm of a foreign government. As the parent company of a massive news organization in CBS, it's incredibly telling that Paramount chooses to say nothing as hundreds of journalists are targeted and murdered with impunity in Gaza while simultaneously publicly chastising film workers for choosing whom they would like to work with based on shared values. We stand with our colleagues of conscience across the industry who are demanding justice, and we affirm the call for a boycott of institutions that are complicit in war crimes, apartheid, and genocide as a legitimate, ethical, and necessary act of solidarity. The very thesis of your statement condemning the pledge is rooted in blatant hypocrisy. At Paramount, we believe in the power of storytelling to connect and inspire people, promote mutual understanding, and preserve the moments, ideas, and events that shape the world we share. This is our creative mission. How can a company with this creative mission actively ignore, suppress, and silence internal calls, stories for which there is clear global and growing audience demand? As employees of this company, we're increasingly galvanized to push back against the demonstrable hypocrisy of this statement. How can a company with this purported mission actively and exclusively platform Israeli perspective while silencing Palestinian voices? Budgets and resources have been diverted from existing programming and marketing priorities, only invested in one-sided stories. Well, here's the thing. All of these, they not only need to fail, I do believe they will fail. So this money that's being spent, these resources that are being diverted, will not be met with a return. And obviously, that's not going to fully stop. It's not going to fully stop the companies under the Ellison control from still trying to push propaganda, but at least it will at least it will hurt their bottom line when you are putting out this bullshit and you're not getting a return on it. Then, you know, mistakes have been made. Bad business decisions have been made. In addition to the hypocrisy of platforming one perspective while suppressing another in direct opposition to the creative mission you purport, the second half of the company's condemnation statement is equally disingenuous in its dangerous and intentional distortion of the pledge. Paramount's claim that the pledge is an attempt to silence Israeli artists is a purposeful misrepresentation of the boycott and its objective. We applaud the FWP for pushing back against this bad faith argument, and we appreciate Hannah Einbinder, Queen, for using her Emmy win presser as a platform to reiterate the truth. The Film Workers for Palestine boycott does not boycott individuals. It boycotts institutions that are directly complicit in the genocide. We also commend Javier Bardem for rejecting this while speaking to Variety on the Emmy red carpet. Film Workers for Palestine do not target any individuals based on identity. The targets are those film companies and institutions that are complicit and are whitewashing or justifying the genocide and its apartheid regime. We do stand with those who are helping and being supportive of the oppressed people. As Paramount employees who support the pledge, we believe it's critical to underscore this point. The boycott is not an attack on filmmakers. It explicitly draws inspiration from filmmakers united against apartheid. The organization co-founded in 1987 by Jonathan Demme and Martin Scorsese and comprised of more than 100 prominent filmmakers who refused to screen their films in apartheid South Africa. Similarly, we are confident that when history looks back at the Film Workers for Palestine pledge, it will do so with a similar respect for its foresight and the humanitarian insight with which the FUAA pledge is regarded. When a powerful media conglomerate attempts to intimidate film workers for exercising their freedom of expression to condemn war crimes in this manner, who is really doing the silencing? Signed, Paramount Employees for Human Rights. I looked back and found photos from the first protest, and I forgot how soon after October 7th such genuinely sizable crowds mobilized to defend Palestinians. That is because it was soon after October 7th that Israel began committing genocide and were very clear in their intent to wipe out conservative because you vote with your wallet or something like that, where it's almost a justifying people aging and becoming more conservative. It's you're older now, you're wiser now, and also it's like financially responsible to become more conservative. But also people not necessarily becoming more conservative, society becoming more progressive. But somebody like Van Jones, you have to also keep in mind that Van has been a figure in mainstream media for a long time, right? This clip was him on Bill Maher's late night show. So Van is not just a person who got older and then became right wing when they used to once upon a time be a Maoist Marxist Leninist. Van is a major media figure. And so that is why I'm inclined to see Van Jones as an opportunistic fuck, as somebody who saw his chance and took it and has ensured his allegiance to power in order to maintain the class status that he now has. So it's why too his so-called progressive past feels performative, because to me, I can't see how somebody like Van does a 180 that way without having always been an opportunist and ultimately not truly principled, and that there was always something else there that he was that he had his eye on. All the people I know in real life getting older do not all have that transition. They like actually believe what they do. They're not performing, they're living. Right. And I think what that chatter said is a lot of times it's not even necessarily that people become more conservative. And let's be real, like Van Jones didn't become more conservative. Saying what he said in 2003 to then mocking dead Palestinian babies in 2025, that is not just like became more conservative as he got older. That is fucking straight up propaganda. That is like serving the interests of the Israeli state, making sure he always has his yellow ribbon, any opportunity to prop up Israel. So, but as Chatter said, and I agree with, is that a lot of times it's society progresses and people do not. So it's not that they it's not that they actively chose to become more conservative. It's that they did not progress along with the rest, along with society's shifts. I feel like there's always an ulterior motive. My fully unfounded theory is that he tried to start a cult and failed because the leftist women were too smart, so he went full money route. I mean, look, I'm willing to believe just about any theory. I also believe that he is. I believe he's in the pocket of Israel. I don't think that's hard to ascertain. But yeah, when it comes to Van Jones and the Van Jones grift, it feels as if the sky is the limit as to why, like, what were the reasons that Van Jones decided to go down this path? Isn't he gay? No, I think you're thinking of Don Lemon. Not the same person, but Don Lemon is gay. Don Lemon also. Don Lemon. Also obnoxious. Not as bad as Van Jones. At least not as I can think of on the topic of Israel. I mean, it's a mid-off in the worst way. I slightly better. Don Lemon is. I wouldn't say he's worse though. Van Jones is the type of person that kisses up to power. He's acting as if Trump was his best friend in his first term, then kicked Trump's back in the moment he lost to Biden. He's nothing but a grifter who will kiss up to billionaires and the powerful in order to get a bag. And guess what? That's what Barry Weiss did, and it worked for Barry Weiss. So this is what I mean by Barry Weiss is not the only person to do this. And also, people are now seeing how well this worked for Barry Weiss and are more than happy to offer themselves up next. Be like, hey, I'll do what Barry Weiss did. I'll be your guy. Since he got fired, Lemon's been a bit better. Yeah, I would say that's true too. Since he got fired, he's been a bit better. Okay, in surprising news though, In surprising country news, does anybody know who Zach Bryan is? Any country fans here? So if you had told me like Zach Bryan, white country star, I would probably assume he is either MAGA or apolitical, which is also just MAGA light. That is, I'm just being honest. That's the assumption that I would make. Here, I'll play a little bit of a Zach Bryan song. Just to give us an idea. I think also though, because I would confuse him with, isn't there another Bryan? There's like Luke Bryan. Zach, or I get Zach Bryan and Zach Brown mixed up. Luke Bryan. Yeah. I would also probably be like, oh, isn't that Luke Bryan? Luke Bryan sucks. Okay, so this is Zach Bryan. He treated an ex pretty horrifically, but his music is good. Yeah, I mean, I think he's got a good voice. He has a song with Casey Musgraves.